Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today. I'm really glad to be back. So it's been kind of crazy. We've kind of covered marketing for quite a long time, and then we dived into Premier Partner, and then I was out and had some people in between. So it's been a while before we talked about anything other than marketing. It's been like months. So here we go. I'm looking forward to talking to you guys about something really cool that we've been working on. I will apologize in advance for a couple distractions. I'm actually working from the home office today, and I've got two people that'll probably show up at my door within the next hour or so. So I might have to step away from the mic for 2 minutes. And on the other end, you might just hear my dogs barking in the background to let me know that somebody is here. So I apologize in advance for those potential interruptions. So today we're talking about a topic that means a lot to me. Now, I've talked about this topic about 9 months ago. And about 9 months ago, I reviewed the scorecard I'm going to show you in the framework. And I want to talk to you a little bit more about both and what we're doing along this line. So last year, I really got an interest in virality and what causes virality, what makes things go viral. And I read every book that I could find, listen to, Kindle it. I mean, whatever version they had, I got them all, and I went through them all. And probably one of the best ones was named Contagious, and I recommend everybody read Contagious. There's a lot that you're able to get out of it. And then I just actually made it through another book on a trip to Miami this last week for Credit Fest that also talked about a lot of topics related to virality, and it wasn't designed to talk about that. It's called Explosive Growth. 100 million users. Explosive Growth is the name of it by Cliff Lerner. And he owned a couple dating sites in the 90s and 2000s that were popular, that became really big. And his whole thing was about how he did that with what he calls growth rockets, which really isn't paying for business, but finding these unconventional ways to grow businesses. And they grew multiple of their brands based on components of virality without really even understanding what they were doing or how they were doing it. And then after the fact, later discovered that. So Contagious is a great book, and I read a lot of them on this topic of what causes content to really go viral. Like, how do you produce a piece of content that can get mass spread of millions or, tens of millions of views and followers? Because when you can accomplish that without, spending the money that it would take to get those leads, then obviously, as you can imagine, it's a really, really, really effective way to grow a business if you understand how it works. So today, we're going to be talking about what I have designed as to be the virality framework, notes from a lot of these books. And then I'm actually going to introduce you to our virality scorecard here, which all of our content must meet certain criteria before it gets released. And this scorecard basically establishes whether it has the ability to go viral or not. So let's talk through this. So when it comes to the virality framework, really, and this came really from Contagious, and you can see Jonah Berger's information right here. And a lot of these notes kind of were an overview of what I learned going through his information. So there's 6 virality aspects all content should have. And the way that really viral content works is it basically has almost all of these 6, if not all. And for any content, and by the way, when this probably tomorrow, I'll have these 2 guides put up with the webinar itself, so you'll have access to both of these. So the more components you have, the better chance you have of something going viral, period. So let's look at these. Social currency. Does talking about your product or idea make people look good? Can you find the inner remarkability, leverage game mechanics, make people feel like insiders? Okay. So again, social currency really has to do with the fact that people share stuff that makes them look good, right? So if you think about some of that stuff on social as an example, the stuff we like to share is stuff that like we're aware of, but we don't know if like anybody else has actually seen before, right? Have you ever seen something like that? Or brand new news comes out and like you want to be the one that talks about it with your friends first. You want to text and say, hey, can you believe this person just passed away? Or can you believe this just happened? So again, things that make you look better because you're the first one there, you're sharing the information. Again, can you find the inner remarkability? Is it remarkable? Okay. And again, look at the definition of remarkable. Is it worth remark? Okay, does it leverage game mechanics? Meaning, does it have a game aspect to it? Does it make people feel like insiders by having that information? So we'd like to think that education does this, and it does. If you're educating people, it may make people feel like insiders in certain ways. And again, we'll dive into these more, but the more of those components you have, the better. So triggers, consider the context. What cues make people think about the product or idea? How can you grow the habit and make it come to mind more often? Okay, and I put here habitat, not habit, but that's okay. So the idea here is that what creates the trigger. So an example in Contagious was that, when Kit Kat sales were really declining, they came up with this campaign of a Kit Kat and coffee. and talks about how coffee goes so well with Kit Kat. So what they did was they created a new trigger, coffee, to trigger people in a new way to think about Kit Kat bars as an example. So another thing here is like, if you could sit there and establish, for example, that you never even think about going to apply for a bank unless you do X, whatever X may be, well, then you're establishing even seeing a bank as the cue to think about your product or service. Emotion, focus on feelings. Does talking about your product or idea generate emotions? Okay, and we're going to talk a little bit more about all of these as I go through. Okay, a public, does your product or idea advertise itself? Can people see what others are using it? And an example here is Apple. You know, why Steve Jobs made it where when you open your Apple computer, you're not seeing the Apple logo. It's the opposite. You know, the person that's looking at your computer seat can see it the right side up, and that was for this purpose, so other people can see that you're using it. Okay, so can you create behavioral residue that sticks around even after people use it? And we'll talk a little bit more about this, but again, that's a perfect example of Apple's logos or Apple's emblem on their laptop computers. Practical value, does talking about the product or idea help people help others? Okay, how can you highlight incredible value, packaging your knowledge and expertise into useful information that people want to disseminate, right? And you've seen this before too. If I'm sharing something to people that they don't know, that like you read it or go through it and go, wow, man, that's awesome. I just learned something I didn't know. Well, then that's something that, again, has the component of virality, because by sharing it, it makes me look better because I'm helping you. Stories. What is your Trojan horse? Is your product or idea embedded in a broader narrative that people want to share? Is this story not only viral, but also valuable? So again, we've heard a lot about this, especially recently, brand stories. What is your brand story? Okay, and I'm seeing two of your screens. All right, well, let me take that one down. And let me see if I can fix this here. Let's see, to clean. How about that? So it's not so confusing. I think your screen, okay, cool. So hopefully, because I was just looking at something else for another video I was going to do. So hopefully, here we go, screen 2. Hopefully that fixes it. If that fixes it, say yes in the chat. Hopefully that'll fix it. Okay, so let's dive into more of these, right? So social currency, okay, humans like to share things. It's one of the main reasons social media is so popular. Okay, and one of the things sharing does is that it helps us signal to others what our identity is. We share things like our likes, opinions, more, letting other people know. So again, you know, one of the prime purposes of why we share, okay, whether we're aware of it or not, is it helps us look good in the eyes of others. I mean, if you really think about that core statement, it makes so much more sense on why we share content. We share content that in some which way or form makes us look good, okay? We want to be the person who shares the hot new band or cool new restaurant, again, because it makes us look hip. Perfect example. We want to tell our friends about trending news before they even know about it, right? Okay, so we want to show photos of recent trips to show how awesome our lives are and more, right? It all makes us look good. If you think about it, you know, what kind of pictures do you put on social media? You only put pictures there that make you look good, obviously. Okay, so this behavior can be labeled as social currency, right? And again, we build up that social web by sharing and influencing others in a positive way. So now when we talks about is he says there are basically a few ways to do it. And there's find the inner remarkability, leverage game mechanics, and make people feel like insiders. So let's look at each one of those. So again, inner remarkability. You want to make the product, whatever it is that you're promoting, as remarkable as possible, so they want to share it, right? And an example here, for example, was when we talked about the Blendex blender, the one that blended iPhones. Well, that was remarkable. The reason those videos went viral is because like throwing all these crazy things in blenders, including iPhones, and the fact that that blender would crush those things was remarkable in itself. So having a remarkable product, which of course, Curtis, we would like to think we have that. But again, having something remarkable itself is worth sharing, okay? And again, one way to do this is breaking a pattern people have come to expect, or just focus on what your product stands out the rest. Again, that's remarkability. What makes it worth remark? It's usually something different. It's breaking a pattern. Again, we're not used to seeing blenders blend iPhones. So that's why that one example of that product that actually went viral. So leverage game mechanics. Well, game mechanics are the elements of a game, application, or program, rules, feedback loops that make it fun and compelling, right? So if possible, this is what you want to do. We want to gamify as many things as possible. So some kind of currency, for example, is Regal Crown Club with Regal Cinemas, where people gain points to do these type of things. Well, again, what these mechanics help us do is they help us, you know, motivate us on an interpersonal level by encouraging what they call social comparison. Okay, so people like to compare how they compare to others. Okay, and if they can do that, then again, it's one of those things where it kind of gamifies it. And this is very, very, very true. As a matter of fact, when we look at quizzes, so an example here is quizzes. Quizzes is one of the best strategies to obtain leads right now. People are really hyper responsive to quizzes. And some of the best quizzes you see do exactly like this, right? It's how do you compare to others? I saw one on sex the other day where what's your sex number compared to other people, meaning how many people you've had sex with people that are of your same or of other people in your age group. Okay, so again, people like this component of being able to compare themselves to others. Okay, and that's a great way, and quizzes are an example or a perfect example. So again, game mechanics help create that social currency because it gives a positive impression to others in our group whose opinions value. And the great thing is that you can gamify things that you wouldn't think are a game. Okay, so Jonah's example in that book is the airline miles program, where all of a sudden he's making it, fun to be able to fly and loyal to stay to one airline because they're accruing those actual points. So the third one is to make people feel like insiders, okay? Because this is all about scarcity, right? So scarcity is about how much of something is actually offered. So scarce things are less valuable and higher in demand, right? So scarcity is one of those big things. So a perfect example here of scarcity, I saw this last year actually with Build-A-Bear. So with Build-A-Bear, what happened was Build-A-Bear actually came out with something where they were, give me 1 minute. So another component here, for example, was Build-A-Bear. And excuse me, I told you I'd probably have a couple interruptions here. So when it comes to Build-A-Bear, Build-A-Bear had a contest last year, or they had an announcement that like you came and you could build a bear for $5. And then what happened was that they had lines around the block at their stores. It was so much that they had to hand out vouchers. They ran out of bears. It was crazy. And the whole thing was completely done by word of mouth. And it was done by word of mouth because if you think about it, it had these components, right? It was remarkable. I mean, being able to get a Build-A-Bear for $5, anybody that knows how much they are knows how difficult that is. And then also being able to come in and feel like an insider. The fact that I shared it made me feel like an actual insider because again, I had this inside knowledge that you were able to get this for only $5. So what happened was everybody on social shared it. And then as a result of that, they're then able to come in and feel like insiders by doing so. And then all of a sudden the whole thing went viral. So it's a really good example. So another one is Keep. Now Keep, for those of you that don't know, is the new brand version of Infusionsoft. And Keep actually roped me into this because they did an interview with me at Social Media Marketing World. Then they put my parts of my interview as part of a big promotional campaign they're doing. Well, it's pretty smart because what they did was went to a lot of influencers and a lot of people that run larger companies, and then they basically included us in their promo video. So what happens? Well, we feel like insiders, and so then what do? Well, we take the promo video and their assets they're supplying us, and then we share it. We share it everywhere, right? So again, by making people feel like insiders is a really big important component of virality. And then these are all about that social currency, right? It's what it comes down to, this social currency, the inner remarkability. Okay, so we want to share things that are remarkable. We want to share things that are fun, the game mechanics of it. And again, we want to share things that make people feel like insiders. Okay, so those are the three things that really comprise this social currency. So let's look at number 2. So in other things, let me see if there's anything else. Okay, if something is supposed to be secret, people might well be more likely to talk about it. Okay, so people like some things that are more secret. More than 40% of what people talk about is their own personal experiences. Pretty interesting. People share things that make them look good. We talked about that as well. Word of mouth then is a prime tool for making a good impression. Okay, so nothing else there. Okay, so people don't need to be paid to be motivated. Okay, so let's move on. So the second component here that we talk about is triggers. So triggers, now these are basically two type of word of mouth, immediate and ongoing. Okay, so as you probably put together, immediate happens really quick and ongoing is beyond that. So one of the things that was concluded by this book is that triggers help drive ongoing word of mouth. Okay, sights, smells, sounds can trigger related thoughts and ideas, making them more top of mind. So again, let's think about this Kit Kat and coffee. What they basically try to do is create a trigger where, again, when you think about coffee, now you think about Kit Kat. They put that thought into your actual head, okay? So again, triggers are not only get people talking, but they keep people talking. So the idea of a trigger is something that triggers you to think about something else. So here, a perfect example is that there's a reason that when you walk by Cinnabons in the mall, it smells like Cinnabon, right? Because they literally pump that smell out into the mall because they want people to associate that smell with them. The smell of Cinnabon is the trigger for then wanting a Cinnabon, right? So there's on and on and on, all different kinds of triggers that are created around this that actually make that happen. So what makes up for an effective trigger? Well, he says one key factor is how frequently the stimuli occurs, how often it is, right? So Kit Kat and coffee, they tried to make their trigger something that you see every day, right? So then you're always thinking about Kit Kat. Okay, but again, you don't want to choose something that somebody sees once a month because that's not a consistent or regular enough stimuli to really be able to be an effective trigger. So we got to think about the frequency of those actual triggers. So the next trigger, the next social or component of virality is emotion. Okay, when we care, we share. Easy way to say it, right? These are emotions that most people deem positive, but again, very negative emotions can also be the reason we share, right? I mean, think about the people, the friends you have that just share political stuff, right? They're pretty emotional about political stuff, a lot of people, apparently. Happiness, awe and joy are considered positive. These are some of those positive emotions when it comes to virality, why people share. It really comes down to these three components: happiness, awe, and joy, okay, are considered positive. Now, sad ones that are also tendency to go viral include sadness, anger, and anxiety. Okay, so those tend to be viewed as negative, but again, they all inflict emotion, and in inflicting emotion, you have a component of virality there, okay? This is also an argument by psychologists that emotions can also be classified based on second dimension that have activated, I don't even know what that is. Okay, so what Jonah found in the book was that most viral articles usually included what he calls high arousal emotions. Okay, so these are basically shared by the main sources that are really out there. And those are some of the ones that we just talked about. So we need to focus on feelings, the underlying emotions that motivate people to actually take action. Okay, and this way, let me go to them. Okay, then ask, why is it 3 times? Let me just go through some of my notes here to kind of find the stuff that's most important on emotions. So I kind of already went over the high arousal emotions that we talked about, the ones that actually got the best response. And let me hit those again just to make sure that we have them. So the positive is happiness, awe. Okay, that remarkability comes into awe and joy. Okay, and the negative is sadness, anger, anxiety. And I think anger was one of the most high arousal emotions, and so was awe. So things that were shocking and caught awe, and then things that were just controversial that caused anger. Now, this is interesting because if you look at the anger and anxiety, this right here is Gary Vee very much in a nutshell. When you look at his stuff that he shares on social, he has this radical stance this agitative stance on an issue. If you look at the videos and what the video kind of thumbnail will say, you could tell he's creating agitation, he's creating anger and anxiety on a topic, and then in doing so, he can pull people into the actual content. So again, anger, anxiety are two of the highest emotions here. On the positive side, it really comes down to awe. Okay, awe was one of the ones. So articles that mainly provoked sadness were not shared widely. In fact, sadness articles are actually 16% less likely to get on the most emailed list. I thought was very interesting. So let me see anything else here about the hyper emotions, high arousal emotions. We talked about that. One of the reasons that we're I don't understand. Okay, so that being said, that kind of gives you an idea of the best emotions to actually get the best impact. And okay, nothing else I want to see there. Okay, so high arousal emotions, people take action. I talked about that. I just wanted to see those high arousal emotions again. Okay, emotions drive people to react. They make us laugh, cry, and okay. So again, so we understand that. So basically, the emotions, touching on an emotional chord, things that make us cry, things that make us emotional, things that make us laugh, those obviously have a big component of virality to them as well. Public, okay. So again, this is the reason Apple logo shows the person facing the laptop and not the person using it, because again, it has to do with public. It has to do with being recognizable by other people. Okay, making something more observable makes it easier to imitate. Okay, thus a key factor in driving products to catch on is publicly visible. So those type of things that aren't necessarily completely obscure. So you may not realize it, but oftentimes in bars or coffee shop, the employees stuff the tip jar, right, before their shift. So that's a perfect example. So we ever go into a place, they usually see tips in the tip jar first thing. Well, that's because they put it in there because, again, seeing publicly that other people are tipping, it then prompts them to actually do exactly the same thing. Okay, an example of this he provides is the Movember Foundation succeeded because they figured out how to make the private public. Okay, so this I think had to do with them actually, and there's organizations at the airport, for example, where they will give you a rose and then expect you to make a donation. So again, very public statement. Okay, so behavioral residue is also, it's the physical trace or remnants that most actions or behaviors leave in their wake. And again, this really has to do with, let's say, yellow wristband, for example, for Livestrong is a perfect example of that too. It's behavioral residue. It's something they create, and then it continues to be a trigger well thereafter, something that's public like that. So again, something public, that is another of the components of virality itself. So let's talk about practical value, number 5. Okay, so in this, basically we're talking about something that's really something people can use. Okay, something that's common. So he says here, talk about the prospect theory and this economist, Daniel Kahneman. Kahneman received the Nobel Prize for his work on what they call prospect theory. The theory is amazingly rich, but at its core, it's based on a very basic idea. The way people actually make decisions often violates standard economic assumptions about how they should make decisions. Okay, judgments and decisions are not always rational or optimal. We have all learned this. Instead, they're based on psychological principles of how people perceived and process information, just as perceptual processes influence whether or not we see a particular sweater as red or view an object on the horizon as far away. They also influence whether a price seems high or low. We know this is actually called price anchoring. Okay, so one of the main tenets of prospect theory is that people don't evaluate things in absolute terms. They evaluate them relative to a comparison standard or reference point. Okay, so AKA if they're used to seeing an item at $1, then seeing it 4 will seem insane, even if that may be norm in the place. And that kind of gives you an idea of how that actually works. Okay, so we go on the rule of 100. Okay, I think it's fascinating to consider from both the viewpoint of a purchaser and a seller. Have you ever wondered why items sometimes use a percentage instead of a number? Okay, and this has to do with this too. So when we talk about practical value, what we're really talking about is something that's practical, something that actually provides value some people can use. Okay, so again, when we look at this type of thing, let's talk about an example here. Anti-drug ads often say 2 things simultaneously. They say drugs are bad. They also say that other people are doing them, right? So that's kind of both, or you don't want to accomplish that. So basic hypothesis is that more kids saw these ads, the more they came to believe that lots of other kids are using marijuana, for example. Okay, and they actually increased the numbers, not decreasing the numbers. Okay, so some things along that line. But ultimately, what we're really talking about here with practical value is social currency is just all about information senders. It's about sharing information that makes you look good. And a lot of the information that makes you look good really has to come down to practical advice. It's shareable advice, right? So let's think about this. Some of the best stuff that you see shared is like, 10 tips of things to do around the home, right? Or 5 different ways to get any stain out of your shirt. Okay, think about that kind of stuff. There's all these kind of things that are often shared and go viral on social because it's just practical knowledge. Okay, 5 things you could do to make your business more lendable. Listicles are very big on this. Okay, and there's a lot of things we can do in our own industries as well, but these are practical advice. So it's shareable advice. It's something that makes you look good because you're providing things that other people don't know. So 5 things you don't know about your consumer credit score, 3 easy ways to raise your business credit score. Well, those by themselves, especially listicles like that, have the component of virality just because it's wrapped in a package of practical advice. So stories, people don't think in terms of information, they think in terms of narrative. Stories carry things, a lesson, a moral, information, or take home message. Okay, so the story behind things becomes very, 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 very important. Now, Jonah in his book says blending your advertising into a story is equivalent to basically building a Trojan horse. And from the book, it actually says we need to build our own Trojan horse, a carrier narrative that people will share while talking about our product or idea along the way. Okay, the important part of this is being while talking about a product or idea along the way, we've all known some cool ads that are shared with others, but that didn't make us all talk about the product or idea. So again, what he's saying here is, hey, look, the story is important, but doing it in a way, okay, in this way, we've all known that some cool ads that we share with others, but that didn't make us all talk about the product or idea because, again, it's not just about that. It's about how you package it. So an example here when we really talk about the stories, and a perfect example here is if we think about Harmon Brothers. You know, Harmon Brothers, a lot of their stuff had the component of being viral, okay? But again, what it really came down to was it went down, it became viral because they actually put a story behind it, a storyline behind it. So think about Dollar Shave Club. Dollar Shave Club sold for $1 billion to, I don't know, somebody, but somebody paid $1 billion for them. But they're actually really known as their success as that first component, that first commercial that they came out with that kind of told their story. It told about how their razors were affordable and how it was $1 a month and how they didn't need all the extra stuff that they'd always grown to pay with razors for, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So that being said, that actually went viral because they put this whole story. This guy walking through the warehouse, all this crazy stuff was happening to him, da. Same thing with a lot of the Harmon brothers. So when we think about Squatty Potty, for example, there's a storyline behind that about how there's a unicorn pooping, and that's the whole theory of it, but it's all about how all of that works. It's all about, if you look at the story there, it talks about the colon and how the colon gets kinked when you normally sit to poop and how it needs to be unkinked and all those type of things. So it's, again, wrapping it in a story becomes very, very important. And again, everything is about stories. If you can tell anything in a story versus actually just giving facts and percentages, you're much better off. So that's what you want to do there. So again, when we look at this, we look at the social currency, we look at triggers, we look at emotion, we look at public, we look at practical value, we look at stories as well. When we look at all those components together, we really look at what comprises virality, okay? So a lot of notes here. And again, I'm just going to maybe touch on some of those as we wrap up, but let me show you the scorecard at how we wrap this up. So we took all this information, and if you really think about this and put this together, let's look at this overall. Okay, so viral components really have social currency. It makes somebody look good by sharing it. Now, I'm going to go ahead here, and I'm going to pull up example, and I'm just going to go ahead and pull up Harmon Brothers. Okay, because if I pull up Harmon Brothers, I'm going to pull up a lot of their ads, and these guys are probably the masters, the ultimate masters of making videos that go viral, right? So let's look at if we can find some stuff here on any of theirs. Let's see, learn, blog, podcast. Oh, no, interesting. So let's see, cultivating video news, polling review, polling views. Okay, so that being said, I'm trying to look and see if I can find any of, usually they have some things about their actual videos. So let me see if I can find Harmon Brothers. That's interesting. They took all their success off of their website, which is not something I intended on happening. So let me go down here to Harmon Brothers YouTube. Maybe we'll try this out. So stick with me here. I assumed that their videos would be on their website. They're not. Okay, so here we go. So here's some of the big ones from Harmon Brothers. So here we go. Here's Purple's mattress with Goldilocks, if we all remember that. Here is, this is Fiber Fix, where they drove this car off the cliff. Here is Chat Books, with a mom walking through her house and all the crazy things that took place. And we've got here the Grill God, okay? And then here's Squatty Potty. So a lot of different examples we can look at, but let's look, and here's VidAngel. Oh, there's so many examples, but let's look at this one. Let's look at Squatty Potty, for example. So when we look at Squatty Potty here, then there's a lot of things, and then let's compare it against this checklist. So if we look at Squatty Potty, let me see if I can overlay this real quick here. Let me see if you'll let me do that. And you will, thank you. Okay, so when we look at Squatty Potty, we look at social currency. Does talking about it make somebody look good? Yeah, of course it does. There's a unicorn pooping rainbow ice cream. Yeah, you're going to share that, and people, because it's going to get people talking. And if nobody's seen this before, okay, they want to see it. Then it makes you look good by sharing it. I remember the first of Harmon Brothers videos I ever shared had to do with poopery, right? And I don't know if you remember poopery, but it was the one where the British woman was sitting on the stall, and the video opens and the door stall flies open, and there's this British woman sitting there in this red dress, and she uses all this crazy language about the fact that she just actually pooped, right? So the first time I saw that, I shared that instantly. I'm like, this is hilarious. If nobody has seen this, they are going to die laughing, and that makes me look good. I gain more social currency. It makes me look good because I'm sharing it, okay? And again, it makes people feel like insiders if they haven't seen it already yet. So it had social currency to it. Now, when we look at triggers, well, that's a pretty good trigger, pooping, because like most people do that once, sometimes twice a day. So they actually were able to come in and talk about something that people are doing on a regular basis. So now, when you're sitting down and go in the restroom and you're thinking, man, kinked colon, like I still will sit and think about their diagram of what it looks like kinked and unkinked, kinked and unkinked. That's what they do in the video, kinked and unkinked, like 3 times. So again, they provided a visual that actually goes as a trigger with every time you go to the restroom. That's it. Emotion. Here it's all humor, right? It's all funny. It's hilarious. So it absolutely invigorates an emotion because the emotion is humor. Okay, public. Again, we're talking about something very public here because, again, not only are we talking about pooping, but Squatty Potty became a pretty well-known name as well. So again, the product was displayable in a way that other people could see it. And they have a very unique product that when you see it in people's home, you know exactly what it is. Practical value, absolutely here. What they did was they taught how all these problems you have with problems pooping some which way or form, or all these issues related to that, all came down to the fact that your colon's kinked when you're sitting down, and when you have your feet up on a squatty potty, it unkinks it. And they showed that many different types of ways in the actual video. Okay, but again, it provides practical value because most people didn't know this. Most people didn't know that sitting in a normal position while you're sitting on the toilet kinks the colon. And if you lift the legs by like 6 inches, you don't kink the colon. That's practical value. That's something most people don't know. And obviously, and of course, they wrapped it in the whole thing being a story. The story is the prince and a pooping unicorn that poops rainbows. That's the story. The whole thing is based on this storyline. So as you walk through it, it has every one of the components of virality. And guess what it did? It went viral, right? There's 36 million views. Okay, 36 million. So now let's look at another one of their commercials, for example. So let's look here at Chatbooks. Now, I don't know if everybody's seen this video on Chatbooks or not. If you haven't, I'll play a little bit of it so you can see. Okay, now here.
Some people always ask me how I stay so calm and organized. I'm kidding. Do you think I have time for a bath? I'm fully clothed. I fell in the tub while I was timing my son holding his breath. 26 seconds! Now go fetch mommy's hairdryer. Motherhood goes by too fast. I haven't slept more than 4 hours in 12 years. My diet consists of the protein bars and
Okay, so I could go on and on and on, but the bottom line is that this is Chatbooks, and I love this commercial. Now, not a mom, obviously, but I can completely relate to what this experience is in this video, and I think any mom can relate to this craziness that's taking place all the way around her with the kids. And I'll probably play this and mute it. But you can see your kids trying to jump out of the window to see if they can fly. Like, we can relate to this. Or it's, she's pulling silverware out of the trash compactor. So again, when we look at something like this, we have a lot of components of virality. Okay, without a doubt, social currency, just talking about it make us look good. Absolutely, yeah, it definitely does. Right? Because this is hilarious. And anybody that's a mom, especially, which is our target market, is going to share this because they're like, you got to see this. Like, this is our life. Like, it sums up the life of a mom. It shows all the difficulties that moms face. So it absolutely is a social currency. It creates triggers as well. Now, their product is basically, the way that it works is that whenever you get so many pictures, I think, on your phone, it automatically creates the book. The whole thing all happens automatically without you doing anything, right? So the taking of pictures itself is the trigger. The emotion, humor, again, okay, public information. So again, we're talking about this, that if you watch their video, it's all about their public facing of pictures of how, people like scrapbooks and how difficult it is to take those pictures that you have and get them into scrapbooks. And of course, that's obviously public information, or public when we talk about the sharing of pictures. Practical value, absolutely. This whole product is practical value. Most people didn't realize you could just take pictures, and as you upload them to your social page, automatically a scrapbook can be created for you. Okay, so absolute real practical value. And of course, it's all wrapped in a beautiful story of this mom and these crazy kids that we can all relate to. So again, I can go through every one of Harmon Brothers videos, but when you look at it, you can see that they are all aggressively absorbing all of these. So again, let's look here at what we have as our actual checklist. So here's a checklist that we want you to have at least 10 points, and you would have at least 10. Each answer is 10 points. You need to have 100 before you even create the content, is the way that we do it. So is it surprising or remarkable? Where it makes people that share it look remarkable, makes them look good? Does it really stand out or exceed expectations or references something that does? Okay, so again, number one, is it surprising? Is it really remarkable? Does the content remarkable, or does the product you're sharing, is that remarkable? Okay, and then we again look at those Harmon Brothers examples. Is it surprising? Yes, of course it's surprising. The mom stood up out of a tub fully clothed. That is shocking right in the first handful of seconds. Is it remarkable? Yeah, the whole thing is remarkable as well. So again, is it surprising? Is it remarkable? Is it worthy of remark? Yeah, I think so. If we look at this, they have how many comments? I don't even know how to figure that out. But again, 16 million views, and I'm sure you would be able to find a lot of comments that took place there as well. So can someone obtain some type of currency by using it? Does it make them look good? Yeah. Again, I shared the one with the British woman on the toilet because if nobody'd seen that, that's hilarious. I want to be the first one that shows that to people that then respond and go, ha, 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 that's hilarious. Is this real product, da, da, da. Now they're replying to my comment because I'm the one that brought it to them. It makes me look good. And again, remember, almost everything we share on social media is designed to make us look good. Okay, nobody puts the real pictures of how they look in the morning on their Facebook page. It's just not what happens. Okay, so 3, can someone compare themselves to others, such as friends, in a positive way with it moving them up on the hierarchy? Okay, an achievement or quantify performance that compare themselves positively to others. Again, the biggest thing about this is all these quizzes and all these type of things of where you compare to others, okay? What's your sex number? How sexy are you compared to your peers? Anything that compares you to other of your peers is something that's worth sharing. Okay, so there's a lot of these type of things that BuzzFeed and things come up with, which it all has to do with how you compare to other people. Even the business credit reporting agencies have figured this out because they put comparison scores on their credit report where you can compare and see where you rank to other people in your industry. People like all of this comparative analysis. So can someone compare themselves to others in a positive way with it moving them up? Okay, so another example here, right, is which Disney princess are you? Which Lion King character are you? I'm sorry. Again, all my references are Disney because I have kids and it's like the only movie I ever watch. But again, you see all those quizzes come in, right? Which character are this? Here, I gotta know it. Which Godfather character? You see that? That was a non-Disney reference, like my first one in a year. So again, can someone compare themselves to others in a positive way? Is it exclusive, something only a select few can get? Or is it hard to find or restricted? Or is it available for only a limited time or scarce, right? So again, are you having a really cool special? Like again, Build-A-Bear is a perfect example here. People shared that it was viral worthy because it was exclusive. It was limited time. It was hard to get. Okay, being able to get a bear for $5. Moms shared that like crazy because we all know like Build-A-Bear is like 30 to say you can't even walk out of Build-A-Bear without spending like 30 to 70 bucks, typically closer to 50 to 70 on one bear. So getting one for $5, absolutely, it was exclusive. It was limited time. Okay, is there a trigger, sight, smells, or sounds that will make someone think of it ongoing when exposed to that trigger? This trigger must be common in day-to-day life and not be associated with many things. Again, squatty potty, doing it every time somebody goes to the restroom. Okay. Also, we come in here and we look at Bill and we look at the Kit Kat and coffee was the other example I gave you. They got in with a regular trigger that now makes people think about it. Okay. How about Budweiser? What's up? Right? So they made you do the same thing. Whenever you say what's up to somebody, they made you trigger back to them because at the time that was something that was really popular. Hey, what's up? That was really popular at the time. So they played off of that to actually get it. We're now, like a decade later, like somebody says, what's up? Now we're all like, what's up? And then it goes just like the commercial, right? So they found something that was a trigger in everyday life to associate it back to them and look at the virality of those commercials. Does it provoke a high arousal emotion such as awe? And these are the high arousal emotions: awe, excitement, amusement, anger, anxiety, and not just include facts. When we care, we share. Remember, it's got to give somebody emotion. Now, again, Harmon Brothers, we see it all come down and it all is amusement, right? We see political stuff often shared over anger or anxiety, okay? We see all as things that are remarkable. For example, again, the Blendtec blender that blended an iPhone, that's all. Okay, that's remarkable. So, and again, excitement as well. So does it provoke one of these emotions? Guys, look, if you don't have number 6, then nothing you share will ever even be liked. It has to evoke some kind of emotion to really get some kind of response. 7, does it show others doing things? Social proof that makes the viewer more likely to want to do that thing themselves. Okay, is it observable and easier to see by the public? And again, an example here is Apple, where Apple's coming in. Another example I have is that, I used to actually travel around and do financing for road shows, car road shows, where these used to be really popular 10, 20 years ago, where we would go around the country and do an auction sale. And you get a flyer in your newspaper and say there's a big auction sale and this dealership is having this huge auction sale and low prices, da da da. Well, what would happen was we would go into these dealerships and sell what they normally sell in volume in a month in 4 days. I mean, it was crazy, but it happened. I went to state after state and city after city and did it. Small dealers, large dealers. It was insane. I've been in Nebraska where it was so cold that you wouldn't even be able to. I mean, it was ridiculous. And there's literally people lined around the block with a 2-hour wait time to get into finance to buy the same cars that were sitting on the exact same lot a week before, but that were moved around and promoted a different way. So why did it work? Because what happened was when we went into those dealerships, one of the things we did was we took every vehicle out of their showroom and we replaced all the vehicles with tables, with balloons. And then everybody would come in and all you'd see is all these people at all these tables. And it provided this social proof where when other people would see other people buying, they would get really excited, and all the social proof and the way these tables were situated, it initiated a buying frenzy unlike anything I've ever seen just because of this social proof. So there's more and more and more examples of people we see doing it, and all psychology on this shows it. Like when we see other people doing it, it's accepted. And there's all kinds of psychological studies that'll show the same thing where, one guy's getting shocked and then, it's a study and then the people feel bad, but then they see the other people willingly shocking them. And so they do it. So again, it all comes down to, do we see other people doing it? Does it provide social proof? Does it create behavioral residue where it generates social proof that sticks around even when it's not being used or the idea stop being mined? And again, we talked about this as a trigger, for example, that you want something to be there around. You want it to create behavioral residue where it generates social proof that sticks around even when it's not being used. And Harmon Brothers does a great job of that in their videos. Does talking about it help people help others? Like show how it will save time, improve health, save money, or help them live a better life? Remember, if we look at the Squatty Potty commercial, it taught something. It actually taught what a kinked colon does and the problem it creates with people having have bowel movement issues or bowel issues as a result of that, right? So again, plenty of examples here of how it will help them. Does it actually provide value? Does it teach them something they typically didn't know? Okay, that makes you look good. Is it being spoken about in the format of a story? We looked about that in all the Harmon Brothers extreme examples. And does that story keep them thinking about the product? Okay, because again, the brain is an integral part of this. So an example of what not to do here is this. Okay, everybody, if you know this answer, please let me know. So Oprah Winfrey, you a car, everybody gets a free car. We all remember that. A lot of us do. If you remember Oprah Winfrey giving away a free car to everybody, do you know what company, type that in for me, what company actually was the one that gave those cars away? Which was the company that spent like tens of millions of dollars to give vehicles to everybody in Oprah's audience? So I'm going to ask that question. Go ahead and type in your answers if you know the answer. Now, so far, I don't have anybody that knows the answer, and that's an example of what not to do, right? It was a great and brilliant story. We still talk about it today. You a car, everybody gets a car, right? We still talk about it today, but yet nobody, and Fred's close with GM, but most or almost nobody here knows the actual company, and the answer to the company is Pontiac. It was Pontiac that actually gave away those cars. So even though decades later we remember the story, we do not remember the product or the company because they did a very bad job of branding themselves within the actual story itself. So again, you want to brand yourself in the story and back to the product. And you can look at Harmon Brothers examples. They do a brilliant job of doing that. They're telling a story that is wrapped 100% around the product itself. You can't think about the commercial without thinking about the product. It's impossible, right? So again, this is what it really comes down to is, are you telling the story in a way they're going to remember your product? It becomes very, very, very important. And Fred actually had said Pontiac right at the same time. So I think you got that right, Fred. Thank you. Does it have a compelling headline with a suspenseful hook that causes pause? Creating open loops can work here. Open loops are questions. Open loop would be if I just told you about Oprah and never told you the answer and moved on. I guarantee that I would not end this webinar without somebody asking me, hey, like, you never said the company that actually was the one that gave away those cars. That's creating an open loop. So if I came to you early on and asked that question, I said, hey, look, as we wrap up today, I'm going to tell you who that company was. That's creating an open loop. Our brains don't do well with these loops open. And I'm really bad at this with books. I get into a book and I'm like, yeah, this sucks. No, I don't like this. I don't like the book. But I can't not like watch. I can't like not read the end of the book. Like if I watch a bad movie, it's really hard for me to not watch the rest of that movie because like I have to know what happens. Like I gotta know what happens. That's an open loop. Okay, when we watch an episode on TV and they say, what, tune in next week while this happens, well, that creates an open loop. Okay, the same thing as any TV promotion does. It promotes little bits and pieces of the next episode so you want to see it. So we want to create compelling headlines. We want to create wording in the very beginning of the top of the ad or article that pulls people in. And again, Dave Vanderchuk does a great job of this. He has these controversial topics that he mentions on the headline, on his thumbnail, on the video. And then that creates that suspenseful hook to then want to click the video and be able to actually get in. We have this problem with our content team, believe it or not. Our content team creates really good content, like stellar content. And then they really suck at writing headlines. Like they're horrible at it. And what we've come to realize is that good writers are not the same as good copywriters. Copywriters know how to write to bring people in and entice them. But the funniest thing is, the biggest problem we have with our content writers is teaching them, and this is crazy, how to write headlines, which is an ongoing struggle, and how to choose compelling pictures. It's the biggest things we struggle with. They write great content, their pictures stink, and so do their headlines. So nobody ever reads their content. So it's gotten so bad that we think we have to hire a writer to write the headlines for the content pieces our content team writes because they're so bad at writing content. Now, our headlines. Now, I'm not doing that to slam our content team. I'm doing that to actually tell you that what I learned here was that people that write really good content are typically not people that write really good headlines with suspenseful hooks. just FYI, so you know. So you want to really focus on this, compelling headlines with suspenseful hooks. What you say in the headlines, what gets people to click, okay? And again, the hook, we talked about open loops, but there's a lot of different ways to hook them and bring them in. Is it a numerical or listicle? Okay, these are very, very, very viral worthy themselves. Okay, and I talked about a lot of these examples. You know, the 5 ways to get the best business loan for your business. You know, 3 different ways, or the 5 most effective ways to make deviled eggs. The 7 things around your house that can help you build a time machine. I don't know, whatever. You understand what listicles are. Our last one was probably unrealistic, by the way. Okay, but you get the idea. Listicles are very, very, very good of just taking something like that and breaking it down to the top 5 of this or top 10 of that. Does it have, number 14, a visual appeal such as an image or contain motion like a video or motion GIF? It's said that, and Jonah says in his book, it's almost impossible to get anything viral that doesn't. Like written word and text is not going to go viral. It's a meme, it's a motion GIF, it's a video. This is why memes have become so popular, right? So motion GIF images, videos, memes, all these kind of things have this visual appeal. Does it have an image of a person with dilated pupils looking directly at you or the call to action? Emojis can work well here as well. So what they found was that people looking directly at you are the most compelling type of images when it comes of people. You don't want them looking away. You don't want them looking down. When they look at you, it's compelling. And when they have big dilated pupils, it's even more compelling if they're looking at you directly or the call to action. Now, it doesn't need to say that your images all need to have that. But again, look at Gary Vee. If you look at Gary Vee, you'll see a lot of his stuff has a catchy headline that's controversial. And then it's a picture of him in there, right? Looking right at the camera. So I'm not saying you have to have it, but again, these are 15 components from the book that say, look, if you have these, you have the more of these you have, the best chance, or not of just Jonah's book, but this is of everything that I read beyond just Jonah's book. 15 different things that really have to do with virality. And what we do is everything gets 10 points and no content gets released unless you at least have 100. It at least gives us a chance of our content getting shared. And if I went through every one of these with Harmon Brothers videos, you'd see they'd have almost all 15. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to open this up to some questions, see if any of you have questions I can help answer. And then I'm going to just go through some of my notes here that I have just to see if anything I think sticks out while you're typing in some of your questions. Okay. One reason some products ideas become popular is that they're just plain better. Thought that was good. 7% of word of mouth happens online. Thought that was interesting too. A lot of word of mouth happens offline. Virality isn't born, it's made, and I liked that too. It's created based on that that formula that we just went through. And people look triggers. People often talk about whatever comes to mind. So the more often people think about a product or idea, the more it is. We need to design products ideas that are frequently triggered. We talked about all this. Okay, so a lot of this are just notes that basically we've already talked about. So I'm going to kind of get off that. I won't even go through those notes because I think we've done a pretty good job. So again, I'm going to have this webinar probably available for you to as soon as tomorrow in your back office. And I'm going to include the virality scorecard and the virality framework. And I right in the beginning tell you flat out that a lot of the general concept of this framework comes from Jonah Berger Contagious. Now, you're going to see a lot of stuff I've talked about that doesn't come from Contagious. And that's because I read 12, 15 books on this topic, and all the concepts merged together to create this format. But these 6 components are really a highlight of what Jonah goes through in that book. It's worth it in doing so. But again, there is an actual system here. So what are we doing right now? I'll tell you a couple things that we're working on. We found a company that delivers something along the line of what Harmon Brothers does at a price, at a fraction of the price. Oh, by the way, if you want to know how much Harmon Brothers videos are, I just talked to them last week. For them to create a video like this for you, you can get it done for the low price of $1.3 million. And as long as you're willing to dedicate $500,000 in ad spend to promoting it, but don't worry, they give you other videos beyond just the main one. And if that's too rich for your blood, they have another company they obtain that does smaller projects, and you can get in the door there for $300,000 for them to do one for you as well. Pretty enticing. Now, we found Chamber Media here, saw these guys at Social Media Marketing World, chamber.media, and I can tell you they are $50,000 to $150,000 in price, and we actually set money aside every month to budget because we're going to probably get something started for them with about on the lower end of that scale. Okay, so here's creditrepair.com. And a lot of other ones they've done. I've watched all theirs, but this is chambermedia.com. The other thing is that Harmon Brothers does have a course. If you go to their website that we purchased, it was a couple $1,000s. I think the course was worth it. It teaches you how to create their videos. It teaches you what they do. And again, I think you can come somewhere on their website. I saw here. Not sure. That's their book. Maybe it's up here, learn. Okay, HB University. So we purchased Harmon Brothers University, and we did learn exactly how to do what they do. And I think it was worth the money. And one of the things they taught us was to hire a comedian, which we did. And we went through and wrote a script, which we did. The problem is, and the reason we backed off was that we took and went to have get a price for a 15-second segment. It was $20,000. That's why Chamber Media getting you in the door for 50 grand is a steal, because even if you go through the university, design the script, you have to get the video produced. And I've found tens of thousands of dollars in cost there. So something to keep in mind, but they will teach you that. So we are actually going to be doing something along this line. And in months to come, as we're, again, putting aside money every single month, because it's not something we just want to spend money that we have on. Okay, now the other thing is that we're doing a couple other interesting things as well. The other interesting things we're doing is we are now working on gathering data and being able to put data in the form of listicles with actual listicles with actual infographics and things like that as well. This is what we found. I started to do research to get statistics, and everything came back in business credit to a survey that NAV released like 3 to 4 years ago. And what I realized was there's a hole in our market, meaning that Forbes, Inc., entrepreneur, they all shared this article because I had really practical knowledge of statistics that were related to all different things related to business credit. And so it gave me this idea that, you know what, there's a hole in our market right now where people actually, the people that are, I'm trying to get this thing open. I got to get my website open. The people that are actually out there in our space, the media sources like Forbes, Inc. and Entrepreneur, what I found is that they actually have, let me see, NAV survey. They actually have a big appetite for information that wasn't there. So when I looked at here and I found that this is actually a 2018 banking study. They did this last year. And so you can see, for example, here's a study, 648 business owners was all they polled, okay? And they came up with, you can see here's an infographic that went with it. They came up with all these interesting statistics of all these things related to business owners. Okay, convenience is the main determining factor behind where business owners choose to do their business banking. 47% choose the same bank with which they bank at personally. 46 cited same location, data. These kind of surveys are eaten up by the media sources. So what they're doing is they're doing surveys to gather data, which, let's be honest, guys, 650 people is not a big survey. But the statistics of all they come up with are being shared by Entrepreneur, Inc., Forbes, etc. So we're working on also doing this in a way with actual quizzes. We're using quizzes to gather the data, the quizzes to ask the questions, and then we're going to be releasing it in surveys and then working with a PR company to actually push these results with infographics, maybe listicle format, you know, top 5 reasons people don't choose the business bank they have, for example, with all the components of virality, and we're going to push it to media. Because again, we found a hole in the market where these kind of statistics are eaten up by the big players, but really people aren't out there releasing them. Then the next thing we said is, well, how the heck do we get survey data? Like, will people even respond to us? And what we realized is that quizzes gamified the ability to get information. We could also bring in leads and make sales so they pay for themselves. And in doing so, we could easily get the survey data that we need that way to be able to produce these kind of studies. So that's the second one of the things we're working on as well. Another thing we're doing is we're actually going to give away $10,000. Yeah, you heard me right. We are going to give away, we're taking $3,000 of our marketing budget for basically the course of 3 months. And we are basically creating a $10,000 scholarship for businesses. And we're going to use something called not contest domination. They made some changes where we're not big on them. I think there's a new one called Viper that's similar, but we're going to use a contest platform like this to do it. So it basically is enter to win a $10,000 entrepreneur scholarship. Then what happens is then when you enter in a contest like this, they typically say, hey, you've been entered one time for the contest. If you share it to your friends, you'll get 5 more entries. And of course, everybody shares it because in one click they can share it. They get 5 more entries. Or if you recommend 5 friends, you get 5 more entries. So what happens is every person that enters the contest then gets more entries if they share it and if they refer friends. So the way these contest scenarios are is that these contests have components of virality built right into them because it makes you look good, right? Like if I'm sharing an opportunity for you to win $10,000, well, that's something you're going to share. Okay, that's something you're gonna want to be part of. So if you look at the components of virality, that is an idea that conceptually has the components of virality as well. Think about it. We can go to our media sources or go to PR and go to media sources, and then we can go to them and say, hey, there's a $10,000 scholarship given away from small business owners. Everything they would need in one page to explain it, and all of a sudden that's something that's viral worthy for them to share. Which, by the way, when I talk about virality as I wrap up here, I will say that there are 3 components to every single thing that goes viral. The first is what I just taught you, content, what the content has to do. Everything that goes viral has 3 pieces. 1 is content, 2 is influencers, 3 is media. It all follows exactly the same format. You have content that's viral worthy. Content gets pushed or picked up by influencers. Influencers share it. Influencers sharing it shows massive social proof that the content is well received. Then that social proof is promoted through media sources, and then it goes viral. It's the same thing, guys, with every single thing that's ever gone viral. If you look at it and you track it on, and I've looked at Twitter feeds of all the stuff that goes viral, I've looked at the hashtags, I've seen it. And what happens is the content is released, it goes to influencers, mass shares within a network, mass shares within the network, right? Then because of the mass shares, now media picks it up. Media starts to see it on their Facebook page. Media starts to see it shared. And they are like, what? This video has been viewed 790,000 times. That's social proof that people want to see this video. And so then they're pushing it out. Every single thing that goes viral fits the content format I've taught you. And then it also goes through influencers, and then it goes through media. Okay. I'm telling you guys what took me I don't know, 100 hours to learn, reading every single book on this topic, and it's something you all can do. Now, what you do with it, well, you tell me. A year later, we have 3 strategies that we are developing using everything we've learned. Will they work? Don't know. Tell you in a year. But again, now you have the basics in your mind to start thinking through a formula to create your own content. Do what we do. Everything should fit this criteria to at least give you a chance of it even being shared or liked. And then again, think about what you can really do to the extreme to make really viral content that you could push through influencers. Start building influencer relationships like we are now. We're actually paying a company to do this for us. Okay. And on top of that, we also have business development for the first time in-house to build the influencer relationships. And at the same time, we actually, after going through this, we actually had a virtual assistant get us every single one of the top 5 media sources in the business space in every major city across the country, every market. Now, what we'll do with it, I don't know. But the minute I went through all this, I thought, well, let's start gathering media sources in mass. And we were doing it. Now we've hired a PR company to help that already has relationships with those PR sources. But it's the same thing. Content step 1 goes to influencers. We'll go to media. That's how we make things go viral. So I'm going to wrap this up. Pamela, you're amazing. Thank you. I appreciate that comment. That's awesome. So I'm going to wrap this up. Hopefully you got a lot out of this. I'm going to now go right to Joni, my assistant. I'm going to say, Joni, I don't actually like to call her my assistant. I'm going to go to Joni, my team member, and I'm going to send both of these things to her, and I'm going to make sure that they go live when the webinar goes live, probably tomorrow. If you have any questions, comments, anything we can help with, at the top of sweetlogin.com when you log in is all the contact information for our team. And Alan says, superb. So good. I'm glad you guys got a lot out of this. But remember, it doesn't do anything unless you use it. So hopefully you'll be able to put some of this stuff to use in your business. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I will see you next Tuesday here at 3 o'clock Eastern, where we'll dive into a brand new topic. And don't forget, guys, these are for you only. These are exclusive. And all the years I've done this since 2011, these have not gone public. I think maybe a handful do. Or have, and all of them, the hundreds that are out there. So this is exclusive content you guys get just for being partners here with us at Credit Suite. So hopefully you enjoy this and put it to good use. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.